Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Diablo 4 Season 10 talk. Today we're finally looking at the situation with the classes and their top builds. Naturally all classes and a fantastic amount of builds can dominate pretty much everything in the game in Season 10 on Torment 4, be it bosses, hordes, pits at level 100 plus, which is a great thing. But what can we do to look beyond that and look at the true peak of a build and character in Season 10? Well, of course, as usual, it's the highest pit clear for every class. As usual then, hellties.com have been tracking this, and so that's the source of the top run tracking for this video. Please check out the website if you want to take more of a updated look yourself. But as you'll soon hear as we get into this, the Chaos unique system, the perk system, it's had a big role. With that said then, let's just begin. We begin with Barbarian, who is unfortunately last overall, but it's not like a massive gap. The top clear as I make this video is a 121 by the player PXX. The clears do push around 119 and 118 pretty commonly, with just 3 players pushing above that for this top spot though. The build for this one is interesting though. You've got both lunging strikes and bash as basic skills being used. This ties into the perks though. Otherwise, there's Hammer of the Ancients and bouncing between Familiar Warcry, Challenging Shout Spam, Wrath of Berserker, that kind of stuff. The key unique for this basic spam build is Hooves of the Mountain God, which provides a new multiplier when using basics at full fury. Importantly, your basics now cleave too though, turning them into a kind of prime AoE option. This combined with the simple Rage of Harrogath is why PXX is essentially having no cooldowns on anything, spamming shouts, maintaining the buffs, and the ultimate. Harrogath lets you benefit from bleeds, reducing cooldowns on a lucky hit chance proc, which by spreading the bleeds in AoE is permanently triggering. These two concepts are pushed to the max then with Chaos uniques, as well as supporting the basic spam through the rest of your kit. Adaptability for huge resource gen, Moonrise for stacking attack speed and basic damage, Variethal for more basic damage in exchange for more resources. Even the new unique of the season, Tazgal's involved, increasing damage for each damaging skill on the bar, and a bonus when they're used. Encouraging the whole double basic thing, and occasionally using each skill for the 15-second buff it provides. Obviously, for mythic uniques, the Grandfather, Starless Skies are obvious, and other various multipliers like Earthquake mods in the final version. In regards to the temporary power of Chaos perks then, we have things like Brawn over Brains, which, reduces armor and resistance caps, but gives you way more health, healing, and overpowered damage. Chaotic cooldowns is a funny one, randomly setting your cooldown timer to 2 seconds or less on different cooldowns, but then bursting with the highest damage type that you have. Unstable power to link with your basics, causing them to crit and overpower with massively increased damage, and dual threat, which causes your basic skill to trigger a different basic skill for 80% of its normal damage. So as they're casting lunging, they trigger bash at the same time, which is heavily supported as a basic skill, just like lunging is. So it's cool, it's very strong, it's just ended up behind the next two classes. So next then, we have 5th and 4th place, which I kind of combine because they're basically equal. Technically it's true at this moment, the highest clear for both classes is a 123, but the rogue clear is faster with a 1246 clear compared to Sorcerer's 1435. This footage comes from the player Synthek, who has a very impressive 120 clear using the same build concept of the top clears. The reason we're looking at this is because the top clears are posted on Bilibili, which is something I can't view in reasonable quality. But the popular build here for pushing is of course Hydra, which has been a dominant build for Sorcerer for this season in general. The Hydra build came about last season though, with a new unique at the time, the Iris, turning the Hydra into a core skill, making it bigger with explosive attacks, becoming an effective AoE tool. A funny part of the way it scales its damage though, is by the amount of heads the Hydra would have had. So through weapon tempering, you just give it as many heads as you can. And with Chaos uniques being a thing this season, it's obviously helped this build. Instead of giving up that amulet slot for the Iris as normal, you could have it on your armor instead, making it a lot more functional. A normal amulet can have a different aspect on it, and proper offensive passives, which is a big deal. On top of that, you have the perks. You've got the Mana Shield, which provides ultra good mana regen and max mana at that, and you can stack output through explosive combinations, tapping a basic skill every 5 seconds. There's Power Siphon, balancing your mana while benefiting from a huge increase to core skill damage. And this combined with the Serpentine aspect for pit pushing specifically is interesting because it's very dangerous. You deal more damage with the Hydras in exchange for your mana at the time of the summon. So logically, that would consume your mana shield and leave you vulnerable and basically instantly dead. So you counter that by using the other perk, Alternating Alterations, which empowers one core skill by using another, so that's why the ice shards are being used. It refunds half the cost of the second core skill cast and increases its damage. So you're playing a very careful game then, making sure the Hydra casts are never putting you at 0 mana by first using Ice Shards. So since you're doing that, you may as well use the Hail of Verglass unique, encouraging Ice Shard uses to spread out more per cast and giving you another damage scaler. So yeah, the build walks a very fine line to push it as far as possible, which to be fair is what pit pushing is all about. On the other hand, we have the Rogue, and it's slightly faster top clear of a 1-2-3, which is all thanks to a familiar name, the top Rogue player Matthias. Matthias achieved this run through the use of the new unique, Orphan Maker, and a focus on Heartseeker as the basic alongside Forceful Arrow. Orphan Maker adds a reload effect for your basic and core skills. Reloaded skills deal up to 360% times more damage, with every second reload increasing that bonus even more. Combine that with the affix on the unique, chance for marksman projectiles to cast twice, and there's some really potent shot per reload concepts there. With this season, that unique can be on an armor piece though, instead of a weapon directly, letting you support the concept with a weapon using Moonrise aspect instead for major basic attack speed and skill damage potential. So either way, it's going to be firing basically a nuke every time with a quick reload between. Support that with basic scalers like Variethal Unique and Adaptability for resource gen. You can get cool effects through Pain Gorges, marking enemies and then popping them with a basic that then echoes said basic damage out to all the marked targets, turning your burst shot into an AoE nuke. Another fun side of the build is the clone, which obviously copies your shots. With some support through Grasp of Shadow, you get more clones than normal. With the Furor aspect, that clone can be powered up, alongside familiar modifier concepts like increased damage against shield and frozen targets. Using Prep as your specialization, you get to hugely cut into the clone cooldown and normal cooldowns too, plus the nice damage reduction for pit pushing. For perks, we see the use of a Beast Cornered, increasing your damage more and more if you're missing life, but it limits you to 10% max life instead of killing you. Combined with the classic Marred Guard then, it puts you at 50% life from the beginning, but then you get a load of defensive help like barrier generation, which is important here. This is why you see Matthias at 10% health all time, maximizing the Beast Cornered, but then protected through an Ultra Barrier. The other picks are Unstable Power for basic skill crit and overpowered damage, forcing a cooldown that doesn't matter when you're reloading in this way anyway. An Unpredictable Alchemy, providing random imbuements on your basics, but increasing their damage. But with the Cold Clip aspect, that forces cold imbues on your basics, so it takes away the random nature, which is clever. All of this causes a very pause and then pop nature of the damage, but it's pretty satisfying. And Matthias reached the boss with 6 minutes left, ending the run with over 2 minutes on the clock, so maybe a 1-2-4 is possible. Moving on then, let's now go to third place, which brings us to Necromancer, my main, with the third highest pick clear at the moment being a 1-2-5. Right under that though, they have various 1-2-4s and 1-2-3s, 1-2-2s and 1-2-1s, it's consistent. Plus, all of the different builds there are being represented. Sure, the top build is to do with Shattered Spirit, but we see, say, Soulrift with Shadowblight at a 122, the fourth highest clear. We see a Summoner related build with a 121 clear, so there's actually variety at the top spots. But yeah, for pit pushing, it's clearly turned out to be Shattered Spirit, but let's talk about that. We begin with the Bone Storm topic, where on the PTR with the Chaos Uniques, you could have Lidless Wall the Shield be on your armor, which is a big deal. Then you're generating Bone Storm, which spreads Bone Storms out. And it would break the game by basically unleashing infinite Bone Storms everywhere. They capped this concept to a hard limit of storms then, and nerfed some other aspects of it like the crit damage multiplier. Still, the potential remained, and here we see it in action, grouping up enemies, doing the Bone Storm, taking damage to that, spawning all the other limited Bone Storms. Very quickly, you hit the cap of the crit strike damage increase, and yeah, you're not giving up a shield slot, which is great. The Shattered Spirit part is boring old Bone Spirit, which was, a dominant pit pushing build for like 3-4 seasons in a row. At least this is a bit more interesting with the Shattered Spirits aspect, causing Bone Spirit to shatter, sending the basic attack, the Splinters, everywhere, and scaling damage through that. So yeah, Bone Splinters is a basic attack, but because it's being generated from the Bone Spirit Bomb, you don't have to manually use them. Still, you'll invest in them in the skill tree, maxing its level, enhancing it for more splinters and making it a reliable vulnerable gen. So, that's further pushed by basic support, adaptability for resource gen, Moonrise for basic attack speed and damage, Variethal the unique for even more damage there. You got the Devotee unique for empowered basics, so one basic can increase the other basics damage, so that's why we see Reap being used occasionally to power up the splinters. It also makes the splinters pierce, which is important for AoE. Combine that with Pain Gorges like we saw with Barb and Rogue builds, you can mark targets and then basic skills will echo the damage across the marked targets. And you shore it up with many other multipliers, turning your bone skills into shadow damage, and you basically get something very strong. In regards to the perks being used though, we have Brawn Over Brains again for massive health and overpowered damage, engaging with Imbiber and Coalesce Blood for synergy and value there, Unstable Power for more crit damage and overpower, and Crazy Brew for anti-resource cost and attack speed, and Accelerating Chaos for big cooldown reduction. So yeah, Shattered Spirit isn't a new concept, it's been a possible build for a while now, since that aspect was added, but with Chaos Uniques and the perks, and you know the whole lidless wall being way more relevant, it's been interesting to see a lot of strong basic skill concepts in these top runs. But again, for Necromancer, two of the build concepts aren't even far behind this one for pit pushing, which is great for a Necromancer variety. But that brings us to the second highest pit clear for a class overall, it's Druid. Druid's done exceptionally well in Season 10 with 2 135 tier clears, and then 2 134s, many in fact at 130 and above, showcasing that it's not an outlier. The top clear right now was achieved by the player DMC, but again that was a run uploaded on Bilibili, so we're looking at third place by Ellie with an incredible 134. This is ultimately Pulverized Druid, ultra tanky, and hilariously doesn't have a full skill bar. You don't see a full skill bar in any build until like 30th place. But yeah, Pulverized is well known, so there's not a lot to say. It's even been a top build in different seasons. So what's changed in Season 10? Well, we'll go straight to the Chaos perks for that. Overabundance and Purge the Infected are an important combo, both about generating a lot of spirit and then spending it effectively. So Overabundance means as you generate spirit, you stack a damage multiplier. Purge gives you an easy crit source and crit damage increase, but then cost spirit. So, with massive spirit generation in the build, you get to maximize the value. Things like Gift of the Stag will help, Starless Skies Mythic of course plays a major role, and you lean heavily on the Lum rune to proc primary resource as much as possible. But on the other hand, you have Purge, which mods your core skills into poison damage. There's a lot of that through the build. The Chaos Unique version of Lightbringer means you get to have the Pulverized Puddle Slash without giving up a weapon slot, encouraging massive overpower potential and poison modifier. This then allows for Rabid Bear on the weapon slot, so while your Grizzly Rage is going, you're converting damage into poison damage and spreading rabies. With the Chaos perk Brawn Over Brains, you scale overpower damage massively in combo with that. And you've got easy guaranteed crits from the Purge perk, so the poison multiplier from Envenom's obvious, as well as all crit damage multipliers like Avian, Wrath and more. So overall, the Pulverized Druid in Season 10 has better access to crit, poison benefits, and even more reason to overpower. The fact that Lightbringer can be placed nicely in an armor slot, as well as something like Banished Lord's Talisman being on an armor slot instead of an amulet slot, is massively impactful. All of this potential has pushed Druid so much further than just a pit 100 and nearly at the top, but only one class is in that spot. As expected, we have Spiritborn at the top spot for Season 10, with its incredible performance in the PTR. The top clear at this moment though is a 139, 4 above Druid's top run, with multiple 138s behind that, 137s, and so on. It's the dominant class. This footage comes from Karma, so we can actually take a look at a full run, rather than say just the boss skill of Makuna, who actually holds the top spot currently. The Rake Evade build pushes the class to its limits then, but demands a pretty perfect setup to actually function at this level, so it's not an approachable take. The idea is to apply Rake as your spammable output, making it as big as possible and trigger multiple when you press it. The Evade part of the build exists to refresh Rake, spreading feathers and through Thunder Spike keeping Evade available. So throughout this you're maintaining Scourge for the poison damage, Armored Hide to always have that block, popping Protector to protect yourself but also pull in enemies with a unique and as a damage amp. The main spirit here is Eagle to trigger Storm Feathers on those evades and a reliable source of vulnerability, with the secondary being Gorilla for reliable unstoppable on top of Hide, letting you ignore pit pack mechanics and just focus on output. Compared to other builds we've looked at today then, they are blasting through the dungeon, grouping enemies a lot faster, pulling them in much quicker, and bouncing backwards and forwards through the group in a devastating way, because that Rake effect is massive. It's funny because this is a 138 we're looking at, and the player's health is not moving while they're doing this. Looking at the Chaos perks then, we have Brawn Over Brains for massive overpower potential. Paired with Unstable Power and Combined Strikes, it means those basic skills result in guaranteed crits and overpower for more damage, but does put them on a short cooldown, while Combined Strikes makes the core skills, Rake, a lot bigger. That does give core skills a cooldown though, so you need a way to combat that, so the whole Evade and Thunder Spike resetting, that's there. Interestingly, with back off in use, you deal less damage to enemies close to you, but increase damage to all enemies behind them by a hefty 200% multiplier. Those massive rakes and the constant back and forth evading must let this trigger effectively despite the close aspect. Anyway, scaling damage through main sources of crit, overpower and basic tags is having a huge impact. And the Chaos Uniques once again means you don't have to give up a weapon slot for unique effects like Rod, meaning your core skills are also basic skills as a tag, and the weapon slot can be given to something potent like Wild Claws to cause that second rake every rake cast. So it's ridiculously good and so much faster than other builds while it does it. It's pretty silly. I don't mind Spiritborn having some crazy good seasons like this. They were way too good when they launched, but then they had a long period where they were really bad. But yeah, there you have it. That's my overview of the classes, their current top build and what's going on with them in Season 10. Again, I think the Chaos Uniques and the perks have been a huge hit. I'd probably rank this as my favourite power system and temporary mechanic they've done so far. The way it's enhanced builds or opened up potential for new ones has been really good for the game. I think variety at the top level is really important. So I do think it'd be a good idea if they kept some version of that in future seasons, so we'll see. But until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.